Aloha, ladies and bassermen. I'm Josh Fosgreen, and today I'm going to teach you how to play open string chords. Now the dilemma with bass chords is that they sound really cool and we all want to know how to play them, but often chord voicings are really difficult to learn at first because you have to get multiple fingers to do what you want them to do at the same time, whereas with normal bass playing, you're only playing one note at a time. So playing chords is a much different approach that requires a lot more coordination normally, but today we're going to do the super easy version, which still sounds really cool. So what we're going to do is we're still going to be playing chords, but we're only going to be fretting one or two notes with the left hand, but just by fretting one note and then adding in an open string, we get to play a chord without doing a lot of work with the left hand. So isn't that cool? And we're going to learn 4 different chord voicings today. I say chord voicings, but really we're just going to play some notes and stick open strings on them, and it's going to be really fun and easy and sound pretty cool. So you'll need the PDF to follow along today. Click on this thingy-majig and get it for free, and it's got sheet music and tablature that you can follow along with. The first line in that PDF, which you should now be looking at, is just a sample of the 4 chord voicings we're going to learn today. And the cool thing about open string chords is you can use any of your 4 strings as your open string to add a fretted note to turn into a chord. You know, it makes a little more sense to people at first to use the E and A strings, but today I've actually included a chord voicing for each open string. So our first chord, we've got an open A string, and then we're playing a C on the 10th fret of the D string, which gives us an A minor chord. Now we're going to play a chord with an open G string, which is something a lot of people don't think to do because your low note is actually our higher string than your higher note, but it's a really cool thing to play with. So our second chord voicing is a G major. We've got our open G string and then 9th fret on the D string on a B natural. So those are just 2-note chords so far. We got our A minor, an A and a C, and then our G major with an open G and a B, and you can pluck those however you want. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit. Our third chord voicing is going to be a D minor, just like the A voicing, just moving it up a string, so open D string and 10th fret on the G string. And then our last chord is a sort of nondescript E chord. It's an implied E major or E7 sound, but we're actually just playing an open E string and an E on the 9th fret of the G string. So all you have to do with your left hand is you only need 2 fingers, second finger on a C, first finger on a B, second finger on an F, first finger on an E. Super easy, anyone can do that. Then we're just adding open strings to those notes. So we'll put that into music with some rhythm in a second. I'll talk about the plucking real quick. With most of these, you can just do 2 fingers, one on each string, so pluck the A string with your index and the D string with your middle finger at the same time. Or you can even just use 1 finger and just rake across, so they're technically not being played at the same time, but it's darn near close enough for human ears. So those are 2 ways you can pluck. You can throw your thumb in here in a second too if you want. But then getting to the G major chord, which is our second chord, again, you can rake with your index finger, or you can go index, middle, 1 on each string. Same thing on the D minor chord. Then when we get to the E chord, it's a little awkward to spread out your fingers like that, so I like to throw my thumb in there, just pluck thumb and index, thumb on the E string and index on the G string. So before we jump into our example here, you might want to get comfortable playing those chords in that order. It'll be a little bit of a mind freak to get used to which strings you're supposed to play at which time, and especially with that G chord, it flips your head around a little bit to have the lower note on the higher string. But it's a cool way to get 4 different chord roots out of our open strings. So let's just jump in here to this musical example. What we have today is a little musical etude I've written for you, and first we're going to play a very simple version of it, and then we're going to thicken up these chord voicings a little bit for those who are about to rock, we salute you. Wait, that's not what I was going to say. That's an AC/DC song, darn it. Here we go with exercise 1. Feel free to just give it a listen a couple times before you play along if you think that'll help you. But for the rest of us, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Excellent work. If that's too fast for your coordination at this point, feel free to whip out your own metronome or drum machine and slow it down from where we are right now. But that's a pretty moderate tempo. It doesn't involve any very fast plucking or anything. It's just a matter of getting your head around the chord voicings fast enough. So that's exercise 1. There's a lot of good stuff in there, and I'm going to talk about how you can take these ideas and come up with a lot more options for open string chords after we finish exercise 2. So if exercise 2 is a little too tough for your left hand, stick around because I'm going to talk about more easy stuff afterwards. So exercise 2 is not a lot harder, but what we're doing is instead of fretting one note along with each open string, we're going to fret 2 notes, which is still not too difficult, and I haven't come up with anything that's all crazy to finger, as some of you often complain about because my hands are so big. But anyway, so we're going to take the same progression, same basic rhythm, and just add a note to each chord. So we're going to modify our A minor chord by adding an E on top of it. So we've got our open A, our C on the 10th fret of the D string with your second finger, and then I'm adding an E up on the 9th fret of the G string. So now we've got a full-on A minor triad, root, 3rd, 5th. And our second chord is modified a little bit. What I've done is I've added the 5th onto this chord also, but in order to get the 3rd and the 5th, I'm having to scoot the 3rd over to the A string. So now we've got an open G, a B on the 14th fret of the A string, and a D on the 12th fret of the D string. Again, really fun to play with that open G string. I feel like people don't explore that as much as it deserves. So there's our G major chord now with 2 notes instead of just the 1 note with the 3rd. Now we're adding the 5th on right above that and sticking the 3rd on the A string. Our second chord, we're keeping the open D string and the F on the 10th fret of the G string, and we're adding the 5th of the chord. You're noticing a pattern here, we're just adding the 5ths of the chords. On the A string. So we've got an open D in the middle, then we've got an A on the 12th fret of the A string, and an F on the 10th fret of the G string. So we've got root on the bottom, which is the middle string that we're playing, and we've got the 5th on the 12th fret of the A string, and then the 3rd up on the G string. Last chord, we're actually just going to take those 2 fretted notes and take them down a half step and throw in the open E. So we've got open E string, G sharp on the 11th fret of the A string, and E on the 9th fret of the G string. So we've got root, 3rd, finally we've got some color on that E chord, root, 3rd, octave. And fingering wise with these new voicings, back to the A minor chord, I'm just going open string, second finger on the C, first finger on the E. G string voicing, you've got to scoot your left hand up a little bit, and then I'm going open G string, 3rd finger on the B, 1st finger on the D. Then I'm keeping that same basic fingering pattern. I've got 1st finger, 3rd finger, then to the D minor, I've got 3rd finger, open string, 1st finger, and then slide those fingers down, open E string, 3rd finger on G sharp, 1st finger on E. Not too hard. Which of course is the idea with these open string voicings, to keep it pretty easy for your left hand to still be able to get nice chordal sounds out of the bass. Here we go with exercise 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright, great work. So now you have experienced open string chords. You've played some 2-note chords just using an open string with 1 note fretted, and we tried some 3-note chords where we're fretting 2 notes playing 1 open string. So now I want to talk about how you can take this on your own and come up with a lot more chord voicings. And a really great place to start is just thinking about triads. I've talked about scales in a lot of past videos, and the triad of any given scale is just the root, the third note of the scale. In this case, we're thinking in A minor. So the root, the third, and the fifth of any given scale is called the triad, and that's sort of the basic chord formation in Western music, major and minor triads for the most part. So you can just think about that and say, let's just take our open A string and try to think of different chords that we can play with that. So let's say we're still thinking of an A minor scale. We can just look on any of the other strings, I'll say the D string, and look for the root, the third, or the fifth of the A minor scale, which is A, C, or E. So I've got an E down here, that gives me a power chord. Got an A up here, a C, there's an E. I could do that on the G string also. I've got an A, C, E, A, C, E. I could do it on the E string too. C, E, A, C, E. So that'll give you the basic triad chords built off of any of the open strings. You can do the same thing with A major. So I'm just going around and finding the notes of the triad based off the open string as the root, which is just one way you can do this. I can do the same thing with the E string. Say I want to find E major chords, I can just go to any of the other strings, pick a note from the E major triad, which would be either E, G sharp, or B. This is a nice one. This is a Stanley Clark chord. Just a G sharp up on the 13th fret of the G string there. So I've got a root and a third, there's an E. So just finding triad notes and sticking them onto the open string is a great way to come up with your own open string chord voicings, and then you can put them together in your own combinations like I did a few videos ago when I did that little mini arrangement of Auld Lang Syne. All the same stuff we were just talking about. I just got a triad, scooting down, E triad, A triad, to a D triad. It's all simple stuff that just sounds really great on electric bass. So I really encourage you to come up with your own little ditty. Don't just do the exercise I came up with for you. Come up with your own music, throw on some drums, lay down a bass line, put on a weird synthesizer, you know, have fun with it. And just experience the chordal options that you can do on bass without having to do a lot of weird work with your fingers. So I hope that this lesson has been helpful to you guys. Thank you for all the great comments lately. I'm really enjoying the sense of kindness and community I'm getting in the comment section on YouTube. If you'd like to help me continue to make these videos, besides leaving me excellent comments, I really appreciate it if you share these videos with your friends. And if you have some bones to throw my way, check out my Patreon page, or you can make a donation through Josh Fosgreen, or you can buy my book, Beastly Scales and Arpeggios. And I am working on more book projects, by the way. I haven't really talked about this yet, but I want to put out at least two or three of them this year. So look for that. Look for more solo bass music and more excellent bass lessons, and I will be back at you soon. Peace out.